at Myra, West Virginia, July 18th, 1988. And I was going to ask Ray about his childhood and adult life, born in Logan County, and most of his life lived in Lincoln County. And Mrs. Elkins is from Lincoln County. Now first, I was going to ask you about your family and your father and his work in the timber business. And here, just put that wherever you want, Ray, wherever you're comfortable
well,
with it. Let's set it down.
You don't have to hold it right up to you.
Yeah, we've got the volume turned up.
Well, you want me to start off with where I was born? And
yeah.
Well, I was born in Logan County on Huss Street, near Man. Man was the post office. And I lived there till my mother died. She died in 1907, around about June.
You was born what year?
I was born in the year 1904. February the 9th, 1904. You may have to kind of keep me on track here. And from there, I don't know, somewhere along the way, my mother died in 1907, and we went to Gilbert in Mingo County. That's near Logan County line anyway. And we lived there till I was almost 6 years old. I left there a few days before I was 6 years old. And we left on a push boat, a raft. My Uncle John Elkins lived beside my father in the town of Gilbert. And he was moving to Logan. He moved to Logan and he built several houses down there, and I think rented them. But that was before the trains come to Gilbert, and the old-time roads, you couldn't get on the wagons much, hardly. And he was moving to Logan, and he took this push boat and loaded all his furniture and household goods, and his wife and son and my dad and myself and my sisters all on that push boat going to Logan down Guyan River.
Guyan River.
Yeah. And we come down to Sand Lick. That was in Logan County where my father was raised, the old home place. And we stopped there for the night. And I got sick that night. And so my father, Uncle John, and the rest of them went on to Logan in the boat the next day, but they left me behind. And my dad stayed behind. And when I got better, why, he took me on down to Logan. And I rode behind my father on an old mule. I can remember yet how sharp that mule back was. But my sister and the rest of the family went on to Logan on that push boat, which I imagine is about 25 miles from Gilbert where we started. I don't know. But that's still in the logging days up there and rafting. They used the river a lot for transportation.
Now, the push boats had to be pushed in stream, or did someone pull from the bank? Was there
they just
a mule hooked up?
They pushed it with poles and old guys. That was going down the stream. Now, if it had been coming back upstream, they would have probably shoals in places. They would have used a mule or something to pull them up through. If going downstream, you naturally drifted pretty well.
Yeah. There's plenty of water in the river all year round?
There was quite a bit of water in the river, but it wasn't flood stage or anything. And we had Uncle John an Aunt Vic's cook stove in there. Of course, everything was wood or coal back then. There anyway, and had a fire, and that was in early February, along about the 1st. And
Did they both your dad and your Uncle John work in the timber? And
well, yeah, they had both worked in the timber business, and Uncle John worked in the timber business, and my dad did too. Well, mostly I think my dad was a cook. He was worked at the camp where they all eat. And, well, he worked in the other two, and he helped run rice out of Guyan River too.
When one thing I've been curious about is how much cash the companies were able to disperse, like the logging companies and such, and how much they had to pay people in kind, and how they arranged their economic.
Well, now you've asked me something there that I'm not too well acquainted with.
Not necessarily from the company's point of view, but like if your dad was a cook, was he paid partly?
Well, I imagine them that worked in state camps, and that they got probably the board was part of their pay. I imagine. I just imagine that it did. I never did question on that. And but they worked and run rice, and Coal and Crane was one of the major companies I can remember. But done a lot of logging in there.
Around the first decade of the century, this would be?
Well, I would say it was around it had been around the first decade, and maybe the one before that.
1890.
Probably when they did most of the work up there. Now, my dad told me the last raft that he helped run out of Guyan River down to Wyandotte in 1918. That was the last one that he worked on. I imagine that was about quit by then. See, after the railroad come, naturally the rafting and all that kind of ground to a halt.
Even for taking out timber?
Yeah, well, they take it out on the railroad rather than they float it out.
They would.
And,
was these rafts very large? How many logs were
well, now, I don't know how many logs were in them. I played on them as a boy, but they would be several tiers of them stretched out. I imagine some of them was 100 feet long or more. I just don't know. There's several of them, and there's several wide. They use poles and one thing and put them together and put them in a group. Take out a raft. I don't know just how many would be in it. And Keenan Ellis told me that it took, in Gilbert, it took about 3 or 4 days to take a raft from there to Wyandotte, down there where they had a boom in the river, and they caught them, and they had, I guess, sawmills and ways to work them up.
They'd string the rafts together, hook them together in a train of rafts?
Each group of logs, I guess they probably 5 or 6 wide, and then I don't know how long they have. Some of them was pretty long, I can remember that. Kind of like, stretched out kind of like a freight train. I figured there's 6 or 8 or 10 logs probably in length. Groups of logs.
And how many men would it take to control one of those?
Well, I don't know how many men. They had several, I imagine, on them. They had to have someone up front to steer, and I think one down on the rear. And then they had, sure they had other help. I don't know how many's on the raft. I wish I could tell you that. But.
Well, now, would it have to be flood stage in the
Yeah, usually when the river was on the rise, they waited for rain to come to increase the water in it.
Could be fall too, or
Yeah.
any time.
Fall, winter, they run them in the wintertime, summertime. In the wintertime, they told me to build a box on the rack and put sand in it where they could build a fire on. That'd keep the log or put dirt in there so they'd have some warmth. And they had them big old sweeps that had a guide with one on the back and one on the front. So ones I can remember, great old big long arm on, they could dip them in and
a curved pole.
that kind of guide them from the front and the rear. And Keenan Ellis told me, he said, now one of them things, he said, if you get caught foul, say, throw you halfway across the river. Throw you across the river. It's pull, you know, and there's lots of weight on them when they
Be like a big lever.
Yeah, you've seen these old cane mills. The cane mills with a big sweep on them going with. But mind you, a whole lot of that they cooked in. And that's sort of the steering gear that they had on the push boat. They had it. I don't remember, they just had that on the rear, I think. And they do the rest of it, their hand paddles or poles. They could reach down, dip the water, and move the rear end of it around. They could put an awful lot of household goods in them big old push boats.
I was trying to remember if something you told me, and something I was going to ask Raymond Black about the chicken business that he did here.
Yeah.
Raymond's father, Uncle Billy Black. Did you tell me you saw their eggs come way up to Logan County? I'm
Yeah,
trying to remember now.
Uncle Billy Black, he sold eggs, but they hauled them over to, they hauled them up there to Sheridan, mostly from here over there. Load them on the express car, the passenger train, and send them up there. And I had an uncle, Uncle Ballard A. Brown, and run a grocery store in the town of Logan. And he bought eggs from Billy Black down there. I guess other places too, but he bought eggs that come from Myra here. And they ship them up there on that train. At that time, there was 2 trains a day up and 2 back, passenger trains, the express car. They went up there pretty quick once you got them over to the railroad.
At Sheridan.
Sheridan.
Well, when was the railroad finished through to Logan and on up into Mingo?
Well,
that'd be the...
I have been told that the railroad was pretty well finished up to mid-tip about 1905.
From Huntington.
Yeah. In 1907 or 8, I think it got to the town of Logan.
Then went on to Maine.
And then from then on, from there on up to Gilbert, it got up to Man, then next probably...
1928 was to Maine. That's the first time I was ever up there.
Which?
It was to Man, and we got up.
Oh yeah, at Man, it was at Gilbert when we went up there. When we went to Gilbert, that was in the 20s.
We changed trains or something at Man. I forget how much.
It's a little short.
You visited...
50
Yeah.
after we were married.
Yeah.
We used to...
My first train.
I used to go back up there after come here and visit. We always rode the train up. I think, if I remember right, the fee was about 3 cents a mile at that time.
But it was Gilbert we got.
What I mean per passenger.
Yeah.
And it may have been a little lower than that later.
Almond Lewis probably will remember because he worked on the...
Yeah, he worked on the railroad. He's
no longer with us.
and,
Well, now why did your family move down
to Lincoln County, and how old were you?
Well, when I got to Lincoln County, I arrived here on the 10th day of February, 1910. And I come down, he brought us down here to live with my aunt and uncle. My mother had died. And we rode the train from Logan to West Hamlin. It just went to Logan then, I think, but a year or two later it got farther up. And that's how come it's come to Lincoln County.
No, your older sister came before you.
Well, yeah, my older sister was already down here. She come down here and went to school.
It's too far for her to walk where they lived up there.
Partly, and maybe they brought us down here to go to school
And
too.
then he couldn't keep anybody to take care of the children. He wanted that
So, my Uncle Mac Ballard and Helen Ballard raised me, and the father had come down and visit. He still worked back up Gilbert in the coal fields, all the coal fields. But he worked in the timber business. He never worked in the coal business.
But in that area.
Mostly, I think he worked up around in Mingo County, and some in Logan. But he was raised in Logan County. He was born a Christian in Logan County. That's 4 or 5 miles above man.
What year was he born?
Well, now I'd have to look that up.
About how old was he when you were born?
Well, I'd say he was probably about 30 years old. I just don't remember when I was born. I was born in 1904.
Well, that's close enough.
Well,
Now, the questions I'm particularly of a mind to ask are about economic life, how people manage and not being much cash in the area, all the arrangements of trading and exchanging, including with storekeepers. Your uncle had a private store or a company
yeah, he
store up there at Logan?
had his private
Oh,
store.
no, up Logan.
Huh?
Up Logan, it was private too, wasn't it?
Yeah, at Logan. And he moved his store?
No, he lived there. They lived down here already. In latter life, my uncle over there had a store for a while. And, well, he even had a post office for a
He
while.
was born 1869.
1869.
So he would have been 35 when he
Yeah.
was born. About.
Now, my mother had been married before, and her first husband died, and she'd been married a couple of years or so, and I think about 2 years when he died, and then later she married my father. That was in 1900, I believe October 1900.
I was going to ask Raymond Black about all the things people would trade when they go to the store here, when they went to the store here at Black
Well,
in Myra.
they was all pretty much similar, a lot of that. And they'd bring eggs, they'd bring chickens. That was all of them breakfast stuff. And they'd bring an old hen or chicken, and you always had a chicken cook out. They'd weigh the chickens and take them out and turn them cook. And they had crates that could ship them on the railroad or put them on the wagons to haul away.
Uncle Billy Black had a chicken coop by the
Oh,
store.
Yeah, they had one there at home. They could put them in. And,
He even bought garden produce.
And,
Oh, yeah.
And filled, took it out, sold it.
And they,
Have some things down in that garden too.
Uh-huh. Did he do that before the
No,
war
it
too?
was during the Second World War when things like that was hard to get.
Uh-huh.
they,
Would he ever pay cash for produce, or he always
I think
exchanged?
I just traded that in the store this time.
they always just took them in trade that way, the eggs and the chickens. I remember over home where there's an old fellow lived up on Scary, and made these baskets, woven baskets made out of white oak
Yeah.
slat. You make them, bring them to the store and trade them in on his goods, and maybe sold a few of them to the cash, but mostly they went through trade.
Yeah.
I used to have one or two of these old baskets here, but I don't.
There was an article in the Golden Seal magazine from
Yeah.
Charleston about people still making baskets up
Oh, yeah. Right, that first one.
Pardon?
This first one of them woven baskets, but that one come out of Mingo County, I think.
They make them up at
My father gave me that, and he said a Doc Perry made it, but now who that was, I don't know.
Well, some local historians up there may know.
That was either in Logan or Mingo. See, but there's three of us children, and we bought three of them. I don't know what the other children is, but I've got mine yet. Bought 3 baskets of that size.
Nice work.
one of the
Yeah, I think it's, yeah.
Nice and tight.
where it's broken around the edge.
Yeah,
I cleaned it up good and varnished it. Clear varnish.
And I can remember Sam Harris up there sold them, made them on steering beam. Some of them is half a bushel baskets, something like that. A lot of them, he got about 75 cents out of them a lot of times, I can remember.
In trade in the
Yeah.
store up there.
I had one of them after we moved the other off one of them.
Any other things like that, handicrafts that people would trade for their store goods? Not just chickens and eggs and garden produce, but chairs, anyone?
I don't remember anybody. Well, there was one old gentleman in our section that made chairs, but I don't know whether he sold any of them through the store or not. We used to have Red George Star, as we called it.
Up in Logan.
No, that was,
No, it's one
that was in Lincoln County.
At Middle Creek?
the sweet and then the sweet one.
Oh. But you moved to Middle Creek east of Hamlin when you came.
Or Middle Fork now.
Middle
What's your-
Fork.
What's
I'm
your thing?
sorry. Yeah.
That's the Middle Fork of Mud River.
Yeah, the Middle Fork. Okay. There is a Middle Creek over there.
Yeah.
And, well, that wouldn't be too far away from where the gas fields and oil fields at
No, it's
Yankee
in
and Griffithsville.
It was the Griffithsville field is about, it's about 4 or 5 miles up there.
Further east.
Kind of in the heart of the gas field.
At Middle Fork.
Yeah.
So there was money in that area then, cash
Well,
money.
when I first come, it was in the development stage. Now, the oil field up there, I don't know, it had been up there for quite a while. I don't know, it's probably 1890 somewhere when it started. And it's all spread out around there. When I first come to Lincoln County, there was a Eureka Pipeline had a pump station, an oil pump station in Hamden out there where Halifax Pipe Yard is now.
Yeah.
And they pumped oil out of here, out of the Griffithsville and Yankee field. 24 hours a day, I think, run day and night. We'd always listen in the morning to the 6 o'clock whistle, and we'd hear it at home in the evening. Kind of, maybe our old time pieces wasn't too good, but we'd know the time of day when we hear that whistle blow.
And they were pumping it over to Sheridan on the railroad? Or
I think it went into Kentucky.
on west, the Ashland or
The,
somewhere.
From Griffithsville up, that oil line, it was a 6-inch line. It followed the river down, pretty much. And it was a gravity line, as I understand it. I understood it was coming into the station all the way from Griffithsville and Yankee up there. That's kind of like the run down the river. But still, they took that oil out of that, and then they pumped it on ahead, and I think it went in Blaine or Ashland or somewhere. The old lines across Mud River down here, and across Little Laurel and Big Creek down there, and I don't know whether it went up 4 Mile or how it went, but I think it went to Kentucky. Pushed that oil up over there.
So they probably had to have several pumping stations, but the first one where they had to put pressure on it
Well,
was where...
as far as I know, that would have been the only one anywhere close. I don't know what they did after it got to Kentucky or wherever they pushed it to.
Yeah.
And then after the oil field began to play out, and they began to haul it in tanker trucks, and they took this station out down here, and I guess it took the pipeline up as far as I know, the old oil line.
Yeah. So the pumping station would be on the east side of Hamlin.
Yeah, it's out there where Hell Park Yard is.
Yeah.
Been there many a time. I've even been in there and watched the pumps run. I mean, that's a bygone day.
Did you get the impression a lot of people had come from outside the area to work in oil and gas?
Oh, well,
at that time?
many of them, I guess, was from away, but lots of the local people worked there. I don't know this station here, Hamlin. Mabel's Uncle Louis Smith, he pumped oil out. He was one of the people that worked in the station there. I don't know just how many. I wasn't acquainted with him much, but he was one who was.
Well, maybe you know more, Mabel, than
No,
Rick.
I don't know anything about the pump station. Only knew it was there after I got going.
Well, I just know it was there, and been pipeline up to Middle Fork. And
I guess we ought to proceed chronologically with our subject, but, you know, if people were being paid wages and cash wages from
I
1890
don't know.
over there,
I figure
yeah.
that oil field, I don't know what the wages was then. I imagine a lot of it's probably about $2 or $3 a day. The first work that I done for the gas company, I started in 1925, that is the Columbia gas system. I got 35 cents an hour. That was for a 10-hour day. You had been $3.50, and we worked 6 days a week. That was a standard work week then, and that was a 60-hour week. Most people work 40 now.
Did you start for them in this part of the county here in central Lincoln County?
I started in over on the Middle Fork, working up in Griffithsville, Sugar Tree, and area over there. And I come up here in December. Started this job up here December. Started to work on the 11th day of December 1927, and I stayed here till I retired.
You boarded in this house.
Yeah, I boarded in this house the first year I worked up here. Family lived here. It was John and Delvin Elson, and Harm and Mary Stanley. There was kind of two families up in the way that was hooked up. I boarded a year in this house.
So more people lived in this house then. They had two families.
Yeah, well, they was the two old people that was on the building house. They was old, and then Mary and Juan's family. Mary was their daughter, and there was three small children, I believe, and Martha Nelson before she was married. I think, counting myself, there's been about 9 of us here. Well, I count the children there.
How much land comes with this piece here on?
Well, that's what of course, I was just boarding here, and I got about 20 acres here, I guess, now, what I've got. But I lived on Little Law when I married for almost 2 years. And when we moved here in this house on the 20th day of August, 1930. And we've been here ever since.
58 years.
And that we have lived here, and of course, I come here in 27, in December, and spent a year, and then we lived over on Little Law. We lived over there in the house, and our water supply was poor. Everything was working.
Mm-hmm.
And everything is very right. George Miller, that was my neighbor, and myself, we come down Little Laurel there and across the river where Flossie Lawson lives now, and over on that other hill down there near where the Oak Grove Schoolhouse used to be, there's a spring there. It runs free year round. They said it never changed, and it's run the same winter or floods or whatnot. And we got what we called a cold spring. I remember George Miller, he had a 5-gallon metal jug can of some kind he carried his shoulder, and I don't remember what I carried mine in, but we carried water from that spring up to where we were.
Is that where Cheryl Miller, where the...
No, it's close to where he lives there, but it's on the left collar.
Yeah, oh, where Paul.
Yeah.
No.
Well,
It was down below. It was,
see, we moved over here. We didn't carry much water, I don't reckon, but
Not
I
up where...
checked on George.
We went down to Flossie's and the down little piece. Over on the other side of it.
To get
I don't know, where'd you cross the river?
Across the river right there in Flossie, right on that bar there. The river was dry there.
It was over there on the hillside.
It's run off right through the hill about it. It's
That's
wonderful.
where George Stone's father had
Yeah, that's it.
land. Yeah.
That's the one.
Yeah.
I guess it's running as free as it was then. I hadn't been. I sure would like to have a spring like that right here now.
Yeah, a few people's water is given out this
Oh,
summer.
yeah.
We was calculating the dates, who was I talking to, of the drought. Oh, this fellow involved with the Baptist church up here at Science, where it's now. But anyway, he thought 1930, 31 drought, and then the next big drought was 1955.
There was one, I think, in 55 along there. I don't remember the date. But now 30 was the worst one till this one that I can remember.
Yeah, that's what they're saying on the news lately. And then he said in 65 there was something of a drought.
Oh, there's been a lot of hot, dry weather. Usually it's come in the fall, but that one started in early like this one year round.
Well, there's been criticism. There was a book recently criticizing the Red Cross for not giving very much help in 1930 and 31 when winter was coming on that year. They didn't start giving out aid to families like over in Kentucky particularly, it was needed till February or February of 1931. And maybe only $2 per person per month was their limit, up to $20 for a family. If the family was bigger, they couldn't get any more. And I was comparing that in my mind while I was doing my research with the money that was paid for working for WPA and the other things during the New Deal a few years later, which was quite a bit more.
Yeah.
You know, and it seemed to me they should have given more for a drought condition than for a depression, because for the people who was farming full time, let's say, the drought would hurt them more than the depression would.
The people that are depending on their crops and all for much of their living, it really hurt them. But I was pretty lucky through that depression years.
Yeah.
Because when I come up here and took this job, I really didn't care too much about coming, but they talked me into it. And of course I was kind of looking forward to get established something a little different anyway. But when that depression come along, I had a job here, and I lost very little time through the depression years. I had much of that time I was working 7 days a week.
Huh. And you were reading the meters?
Yeah,
walking over the hills, the lines, reading the gas meters?
I don't think I lost over probably 2 months work and all that time. I don't remember now, but it wasn't very much. But I had a payday every time I come around.
Alman Lewis used to tell me about laying the pipes. Well, he had a mule, a team of mules, and he was hauling pipe in, I think. I'm not sure exactly what part of the county, but they were still laying pipe up in this area, weren't they? Columbia Gas in the 30s?
After I come here, they've laid quite a bit of pipe in here since then. The pipelining kind of a continuous thing in the gas field of drilling new wells and hooking them up and connecting them up. And some of my first work was, I don't remember the company number of the line now, but it was in the Griffithsville area up there. It laid it to up in the head of Sycamore, I believe, on the Jim Lincoln's farm. It's 3 or 4 mile of 6-inch line to a well. There's a drilling new wells, drilling wells in it. But I do remember the well number. 419 was the number of the well that they laid the line to, and then they reduced it down from a 6-inch to a 4-inch and laid it back down Sand Fork over there and picked up some wells and some meters. And I worked on that pipeline. That's where I got most of my start first.
That'll keep you in good shape physically.
Oh, well, ditching pipeline, I helped lay several pipelines. But that's the largest one I worked on, the 6-inch. The other's 3 and 4, 2-inch. But I got till I took this job up here, and then I got into roustabout work in the gang, and that was just this, that, and the other. Liable to be anything. But much of that time they kept me on meters and wells, taking care of them, checking them, changing the charge or whatever needed to be done.
I was talking to the director of the oral history collection down there. I told her you had worked for Columbia Gas a long time. We was wondering whether they had any collection, any records that they try to keep of people's experiences or anything. They may never have started doing that, for their own local history. Well, Columbia Gas, whether the company.
Well, you're talking about Columbia Gas now. I don't know. It started off, as I understand, Columbia Gas and Electric. Now, when it got into the natural gas business, I better get back. I am not sure, but what their number 1 well was right over here at Branchland, what I've been told, where they built a pump station.
Branchland?
I may be wrong.
Yeah.
And United Fuel, it was a different company. It had probably been in the natural gas business maybe longer than the Columbia.
They merged, so eventually.
But somewhere along the line, the Columbia Gas dropped the electric part of Columbia Gas, CG&E, I think. I imagine that's manufactured gas, maybe, back then. One of the wells that I used to tend to up on Merritt Street, if I remember right, was number 50. And these meters over here that I tended to, they was all low coming out. Numbers like, some of them was down in 20s and meter houses. And some of them was a little larger.
And that would reflect the chronological sequence of when they put that in,
Well,
started that.
I was going to tell you up there when we had a sycamore up there in the Jim Lankus when Columbia drilled well 419. Now, I used to tend these, and I think I remember these names right, or numbers right. And after we drilled 419, the United Fuel drilled well 1583 just across the hill from it. That's kind of an offset. So that was the difference in their numbers at that time.
3 times as many wells as been at least.
But finally they went together, and after it come to Mud River, and that was several years after it come up here. Like I had 2404 and these numbers up here on the Columbia well are 404, and small numbers. They added, and the United Fuel, all went under the name of United Fuel for a while. And they added 2,000 to the number of to my well. If I had like 404, it'd become 2404. And if you'd have had number 50, it'd have been 2,050. And the meters, I don't know what was on the United Fuel side, but the meters, they added 400 to the number of them. I had meter 80 and some 444 right up here. Here's 444, 480. And some of these lessons, here are smaller, back toward that station. They added 400 to the number of the meters. And I had from the Gas and Development Company meters. One time I had 2 meters, number 80, but they to the 2 different companies, but they're all connected to a certain degree. Companies. Finally, the company took over on the completely. I guess they got the controller installed, or I think completely bought the Huntington now. And then they added great big numbers onto them old Huntington wells. I think Huntington had the neighborhood of 300 wells. Number. Yeah, there's been a whole lot of changes in that.
Well, that would affect the records on back. What you
you're talking about chronology. To really know some of that, you'd have to kind of know what transpired along the way.
It would appear different on maps from different years, and might have different numbers. You have to know when the system
if you knew that, you know what they had to do. Yeah. And it's changed a lot. Right. I spent a whole lot of time in the gas field this time.
So, you was walking the hills mostly reading
well, yes, after I come up here, I did quite a bit of it down there, but except for just a few times, all mine was meter and well work and control lines and things like that.
Now, a lot of people I know get free gas because they have a well on their land. Some still do. I mean, it's in perpetuity sometimes. But is this field kind of drying up?
Oh, yeah. Much of what I took care of then has been plugged out and sealed up. Yeah, most of it is, of course, they're drilling some new ones here and there, but right in here, there's a few of these old wells, but when I started this job that I took up here, I had 10 wells and 10 meter stations. That's And I got the 10 meter station, they was 24-hour charge. I had to be to them every day. And the well was supposed to be to them, get 5 of them one day and 5 the next.
Now, why did they have to be checked so often? Just because of the volume of gas that was coming
Well,
out?
of course, at that time, there was a lot more volume of gas, and that was their way of keeping a check on. There, lots of things can happen to a well from one time to the next in its production. You can have leaks. Some of them salt off. You get salt bridges or maybe paraffin bridges. You'd have to clean them out or have them opened up. A whole lot of things could happen to them. But then when I finally finished up, most of all these old wells, about once a month is about the requirement on them, and even the charges. Meters is 30 days, 31.
And that was in the 60s when you retired, 1960s?
I retired 69.
March 1st.
I remember a leak in a pipe that burned for several years up this side of Branchland on the hill. It burned several years. No one seemed to come around to bother. I don't know whose pipe it was.
Yeah,
It was a flame 3 or 4
I
feet
don't
high.
remember that one much.
Oh, well, this was in the mid-70s.
it might
No
have
one
been
ever bothered to report it, I guess.
some of these.
Or maybe it broke out again and I saw it later because you wouldn't think they'd let it go.
It might have been where an old well had been or something, plugged or wasn't sealed. There used to be an open fire burned up here. I don't come out of up on Fez Creek up there at
McComas.
at McComas place. Buzz McComas is well, it's where Russian comes. And come up in the water well, and they had a line laid out there, and had them a bench built out there. And that thing run there for years and years. I don't really know where it come from. It come up through that well, and they run it out there and light. And they had a bench there, and I had 2 meter houses right from it. Cold days, I stopped there and warmed many a time. You could sit down there and warm. But someone told me that it sealed it off or something. That come right up through the water well. The house, right in the corner of the house.
They weren't using it for water anymore, was it?
Yes, they pump water out of it. It tasted awful gassy, though, I'll tell you that. I never did drink any of it at the time or two.
I was living up in Boston. The gas company put out a little flyer saying, now we've added the smell that you smell in this natural gas. We put that in so you'll know there's a danger if there's a leak in your house. But it didn't ever smell any different to me than when you walk up a holler here and you smell a leak. It smells exactly the same.
Well, I
found something that
I
smells
worked
the
in
same.
this gas field here for 44 years. And all this gas in here that I know anything about, you could distinguish the odor in it.
Yeah.
I know they put that stuff in at the station. They claim natural gas don't have any scent, but
Wow.
it'd have to be mighty pure, in my opinion, if it does.
Yeah, it may not be the natural gas that's coming out of the ground then. in that
Because
case.
it's, of course, now after all this gas goes through the station, they take a lot of things out of it.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, they go through it. They can scrub it and do all these, I don't know what all they do, dryers. They can take out and then put in. Yeah, they can take it out and they can put in.
But in this area, before say the New Deal, when people were getting money for relief or for WCA work, I don't suppose there was much cash here in Upper Mud, south of Hamlin, from here way to Logan County
Oh, yeah.
fields.
There,
There wasn't much business going on, was there?
this was gas field was going strong through that.
Oh, the laying of the pipe and et cetera.
Well, no, the pipe, but I mean the production of the wells, it was going on.
Now that would put cash in some people's hands, like yourself, an employee of the gas company. But was people mostly completely subsistence farming?
Oh, there was lots of farming and all that, farming and many. So the trucks and things come along. Many of the farmers use their team to haul the pipe and do all this transport them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can remember the baling machines. The first year on my job, we had their engine and their rope and everything mounted on a road wagon. The teams hauled it out the hills and the wells.
Mm-hmm. The pipe.
Well, that was the little bale machines. They had to clean these wells out when they got fouled up for some reason. Yeah, they hauled them around on the wagon. Then later on, of course, when they began to get away from that, you had some of them old fortune tractors that pulled the equipment. They had them old cleats on the wheels, and they tore up the roads for that.
Yeah.
And then finally they got them on trucks and all that, and more updated.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So people were buying tractors down this way, say around, World War I period.
World War I don't think we had any tractors much here. That was before I got to working on in the gas field, but tractors come later.
Not very many before World War II, were there?
Wasn't too many, no. There wasn't many tractors before World War II.
I've noticed in the records for this county as a whole, in the census records, it wasn't until about 1955 that there was more tractors than horses in the county.
Oh, that's about right on age.
Counting the mules too.
Yeah,
horses and mules.
Well,
more vehicle, more. I guess they call it farm vehicles.
Yeah.
That would count farm
Farm
trucks.
machinery.
Yeah, right. Anything that's the independent unit
the
has a motor. And
teaming in the oil and gas field was still going strong after I come up in the river. They used cattle for a lot of it. Auction. And then the teams, and when the trucks began to come along pretty good, they'd haul it out to the road where they'd done it. Then they'd take the teams and put it on the hill location.
Mm-hmm. The equipment for the gas oil.
Yeah.
The meter and the...
Move the rigs and all these things. Yeah, I can remember when Clayco Gas Company, I think it's Pennzoil now, laid a 10-inch line from Yawkey back through the Hamlin. That ditch is all dug by hand. And pipe, when they hauled it out, they laid it 25. It was all hauled out pretty much on trucks, but then the teams took it on the mountain and string it, do all that.
And they was working ox as well as mule teams?
Oh, yeah, they was ox teams.
Mostly ox?
Of course, it was mostly teams. After I can remember, Jason Bradmore and Frank Bradmore, and a lot of them had oxen. They teams, though, it must have been up in the 30s, maybe 40s. I don't know, early 40s.
Well, Jason Bradmore was timbering a lot.
Yeah, well, they used them in timbering. I don't think he ever timbered much after I come up here. I think he did some. I think he timbered some in this Nanny Branch down there, like Billy Black. I think he's done some of that timbering. But most of their work, after I come along, up here was in the gas field or oil field.
So that'd be after 1927.
And yeah, well, I think about 27 they might have done some, 28 along there, they might have done some of that timbering down there.
Well, I'm just approximating for...
And during that time, sometime after that, they took them oxen and wagons and went to Blaine, that's over in Kentucky, the oil field over there. And they stayed over there and worked them a while. I don't know what company they worked for or anything like that.
So the major timbering had already been done in this
Yeah, well,
area.
there's been lots of timbering did in here since I come up here, but most of the major timbering, I'd say, had already been done.
Now, Raymond Black was telling me that they would run rafts on Mud River.
Well,
not just single logs. I'm going to ask him more about that. It's not a very big river.
Well, it's not.
I think now, I don't think they ever rafted on Mud River any, other than they'd put two logs together, I think. They could ride them a little bit on that one, but I don't think what I'd call a raft. Well, that would be a raft, I guess, in miniature.
That'd keep the logs from turning on you, spilling you in the water.
They'd take these old horseshoes and then cut poles. Well, that's pretty much the way they did the raft. Drive them horseshoes over down in there, and when you get them down the mill here, they pull them apart. Billy had a mill down here, below the store at that time, I think.
Oh.
But most of drifting timber, I think they just kept it log at a time. And them old rock steamers and things that hauled it out of the mountain, Jason Padmore told me they always hauled it out just in as long logs as they could haul, or trees, or whatever it was. Maybe they cut it up after they got to the river, I don't know. Haul them out long, that way they make fewer trips, I guess.
Yeah.
But most of that early timber is all done, over with when I come to them.
I've seen a few massive beech trees up Painter Branch here in a side hollow. It's very steep.
Yeah.
And I had a feeling they never timbered there. There's a lot of beech trees you couldn't even reach halfway around it.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I'm exaggerating.
Well, what's beechwood good for?
Oh, it's good for a lot of things.
They used to cut beech, didn't they?
It's solid.
Maybe not as readily, not as anxious to get as walnut.
They wasn't as anxious to get it. It's awful heavy wood, for one thing. If you're floating it, it probably wouldn't float too well unless you got seed. And a lot of the beech in this country seem to be awful faulty. That is, I mean, it's hollow. Yeah, they saw beech as a demand
Well,
for it.
maybe there was in that the steepness wouldn't stop them, I suppose, from going right up
they figure a way to get it.
go up the creek and work each side of the hollow.
Yeah, but beech, now you see a lot of them old beeches, they left in a stand that probably they wouldn't float very well.
Well, what would they do if to keep the rafts from sinking?
I don't know of anything much you do. Yeah, I think most of where they rafted timber in the big raft, they had a lot of poplar. Now they probably mix them up. Some of the heavier, like an oak or something, that might waterlog and want to sink, and that way they keep them floating. But some of them old trees that get out and lay in the river, they'd sink and go to the bottom. And lots of them that's fixed in there yet. Harrison Sykes up here told me that there's an awful big walnut tree somewhere between Big Laurel up there and down here. I said it sunk on them. Great big walnut, must have been 3 or 4 feet through, maybe 4 feet through the way he talked. But
when did that sink on them?
That's before I come up here, but I don't know. Back in the days when there's drifting timber out here, they never did drift any acre. I come from Mud River, and I don't think they ever drifted any down Middle Fork that I can remember.
And drifting would be just putting it in and waiting
Just
to
to
see
roll
if
the
it
logs in, and the lasers come, let them float down the river. We send crews along and keep them rolled in where they'd hang up or float off.
Yeah.
They'd get awful soppy, wet, and cold then. Yeah,
That was in the winter.
of course, things come along, and began to get the old steam sawmills and the like. Got to where they sawed about all the timber and hauled it out that way. I think the logging down Guyan River, from what Dad told me, it ended in probably the early 20s or along there somewhere. Somewhere in the 20s, that boom washed out down there, Guyan Dock.
They caught the logs.
Where they caught the logs and tied their rafts up, and they never did rebuild it. Of course, the railroad had come, and
What was the boom like? It was like a sweeper across the whole river?
I can't tell you exactly what it was
A big
like.
rake?
They called them a boom, and I guess they had ropes or press. Had to have some way for that water to go through, but I can't, net or something, I guess, to keep it from going on through.
Uh-huh. That'd be something.
Yeah,
Then people would walk back up the guy?
yeah, that's before the railroads got it that way. They had to walk back. And they, from what Keenan Ellis told me, that, of course, he worked in the timber business. But the way he said, most of the time it took them 3 days to go down in a raft and about 4 days to walk back. He said some of them used 5 days. That's,
From Mingo County.
yeah, from Mingo up there around Gilbert. And then after the L&W Railroad got back through to Williamson and back that way some way, they'd go back up that way and walk back through.
We're talking again today with Ray and Mabel Elkins at Myra, West Virginia, and this is July 26, 1988. Mabel is going to give us some information on her family background and how they came to this part of West Virginia. Mabel?
Okay.
Yes.
Joe White, my great-great-grandfather, born 21st of August, 1781, in Maryland, died 26th of July, 1829, married 3rd of February, 1812, in Baltimore, Maryland, to Catherine Hamilton, born 21st of October, 1793, Maryland, died 26th of January, 1873, in Gallipolis County, Ohio. They were the parents of 9 children, the oldest born 1st of January, 1813. The 4th child, Ephraim, born 10th of February, 1818, was my great-grandfather. It is not known how or why they came to Gallia County, Ohio from Maryland, or how Catherine managed to raise the family after the death of Joe White in a day before public assistance and when few jobs outside the home were available for women and for a widow with 8 children. The eldest, a girl 16 years of age, and a child born 2 months after the death of Job. Seems impossible. Records were searched for a will or a estate settlement, but none were found. Also, no records were found on Job's service of war of 1812. Census of 1830 shows the correct number of children at home, with Mother Catherine except 1 male, which would be Levi, White at the age 16 years, a copy of apprenticeship records blacksmithing for Levi. But Catherine did manage. On 16th of November, 1842, one son purchased 40 acres of Gallia County land for $65 cash. On 1st of September, 1846, Catherine White purchased 200 acres for the sum of $575 cash. On 22nd November, 1847, Catherine sold 120 acres to son Enoch White of the state of Maryland for the sum of $312.50. Enoch later came to Ohio. Why did the family leave Maryland for Gallia County, Ohio? Seems interesting. Thoughts are Baltimore was growing, getting crowded, and they wanted more room. They wanted to own some of the New World, land of their own, or acres of land were now available in the Northwest Territory. Today, $50, $60, or $575 seem like nothing as far as land is concerned. But at that time, pay for a day's work was little more than pennies a day. Life in those days were not always easy, so when trouble came, they drew close to each other, and through love and caring, their faith and trust in God, they survived and lived good and useful lives. It is believed Ephraim White, son of Job and Catherine White, later came to West Virginia and settled near Hammond, West Virginia, Lincoln County. He married Almeda Clark, but records were never found of the marriage date, where Ephraim but never found the record date and where. Ephraim was born 18th of October, 1818, died the 12th of September, 1890. Armida Clark, born 8th of October, 1827, died the 4th of September, 1895. They are both buried in the White Cemetery near Sweetland, West Virginia. They were the parents of 9 children, the eldest one born 30th of November, 1845, the youngest born 25th of December, 1869. The second child, a son, Enoch White, was my grandfather. Enoch White, born 12th of March, 1848, died the 3rd day of November, 1923. He was born on Raccoon Creek in Gallia County, Ohio, near Gallipolis. Married Athie Miller, born 25th of July, 1852, died the 25th of April, 1942. They were the parents of 13 children, including 1 set of twin boys. They lived on Trace Creek near Hammond in a log house. He later built a house nearby of weatherboard construction and was then called a plank house. There is also a log smokehouse. Both house and log smokehouse are still in use today. 1988. He purchased the farm on 13th of April, 1878. There is no record where they lived prior to that time. The third child, a son, Wilbur White, was my father. Born 10th of December, 1875, died 15th of May, 1927 in Lincoln County. He married Nora Ellen Smith, born 16th of December, 1885. They started housekeeping on the Upper Mud River near Hammond, Lincoln County. They were the parents of 10 children, all born in Lincoln County, West Virginia. He was a school teacher in Lincoln County schools, but gave up teaching in 1903 for farming. They later moved to Hammond, where Mabel Elkins, the second child, was born 30th of January, 1905. 2 more children were born there. Then later they moved 2 more times, being a renter, always looking for something better. Sometime during the late 1913 or early 1914, he purchased a farm of 30 acres on Lower Big Creek near Hammond. There never was enough income for necessities, as tobacco was the money crop. Some years the price was very low, leaving our family in debt after paying what we could. We moved to the last home on the 13th of February, 1914. At that time, we were near our grandfather and grandmother White, who we had never seen because of the distance of traveling without no way to get to their home except walking. On 2nd of October, 1928, I married Ray Elkins, born 9th of February, 1904 in Logan. We are the parents of 1 son and 1 daughter, 3 grandchildren, and 6 great-grandchildren. We also are living on Mud River in Myra, West Virginia. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Now, can I ask a question or two? Your grandparents, White, then lived in Lincoln County also, but you hadn't seen them, or no?
I had not seen them until I was 9 years old.
Huh.
Because they lived in here on top of Johnson Hill.
Yes.
And we lived on below Hammond.
Yes.
And we had no way of transportation whatever.
Uh-huh.
So
That would have been about 10 or 15 miles.
Yeah. And we lived close to my mother's people, so we saw them often.
Mm-hmm.
But I was 9 years old when I first saw them.
So they lived about 5 or 10 miles the other side of Hamlin.
On this side.
This side of Hamlin. Yeah. Okay. Upper Mud River.
And he was,
Johnson Hill.
Hill down here. What we call
and my grandfather was 65 years old. First time I saw him.
Uh-huh. Well, that's unusual.
Yes, it is.
Now, another question about the tobacco. There generally was a profit of some degree, right? Even
Yeah.
after all the costs, there was some net profit in the tobacco as such. It's just the other deaths may have come along, food, and
One year, we got $35 for our tobacco.
that was a low.
Very low.
And how much acreage?
I don't remember. Maybe an acre to an acre and a half or something like that. But one year, when we raised the crop, it brought $666.66. He left Huntington and went to Ohio and purchased his team of horses and came back and paid off the rest what he owed on the farm. But I don't remember what year.
About when was it?
I can't remember.
Living in the 20s, maybe. Oh, probably World War I period, perhaps.
It might have been.
There were good
I
farm
just
prices
don't
then.
remember.
Yeah. See, you were born in which year?
1905.
1905.
And I moved to Big Creek in 1914 in February.
So it was on Big Creek,
Uh-huh.
Lower Big
It was
Creek,
down there.
down here. Huh. Yeah, tobacco is very important in this
Well,
county.
it was all the money we had in a year's time. And 10 children. No, there was only 8, because 2 of them died when they were infants.
Of course, they weren't counting the size, calculating the size of the tobacco plots till the New Deal started, I guess, in
No, you
1933.
could raise all you wanted to then.
Yeah. Do you think that affected people when they started requiring a base allotment that could not be increased from year to year with the New Deal? Do you remember anyone raising tobacco then who you knew?
Oh yes, a lot of people down here did, but we didn't, because after Ray and I were married, we didn't raise tobacco then.
that tobacco-based business come along a lot later.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't no base. I don't remember where it started. Long after we were married.
Yeah, well, the 33, they didn't quite get it started when the New Deal started, but 1934, and then they became much stricter in 1935 and after that. And I saw some records in the National Archives saying they had a lot of requests from people who had not been raising tobacco for the last few years. They were counting which people had and which hadn't, like in 1930 to 32 or something. And if you hadn't, you had to make a special application, and they only allowed a certain percentage, like 6% or something of the contracts to be new ones. And even that was a special dispensation kind of. Well, of course, an acre is a lot of work. I worked in Hallie and Edith Edwards back here one year, helping them a day or two, and that was less than an acre, but there was an awful lot of hauling. That
I
was
just can't remember how much we raised. It may not have been an acre. We just raised it on maybe a little bottom or something like that. I don't think they even measured to see how much was in it back in those days.
Mm-hmm. Did you work on the tobacco
Oh, yeah.
later stages? Or you were helping to harvest too?
I spread it when they cut it. And I tied it when they stripped it in the wintertime. Couldn't get home from school to tie up tobacco. We tied it in hands.
Mm-hmm. So Yeah.
I know all about raising tobacco then. I don't know what about now.
Well, some people still do exactly the same process. So when would it be taken to the market?
Well, usually as soon as they got it stripped, most of the time ours were never stripped when the market opened. It was usually in January when they took it in. And I think the market opened probably in December.
Mm-hmm. And that was the market at Huntington?
26th Street Market at Huntington, West Virginia.
Yeah. For a little while they had a market at West Hamlin, right?
I don't remember.
Yes, it is.
Well, what jumped out at me from your comments was
Yeah.
the importance of tobacco in this county. And anything else now you've thought of about where is your other brothers and sisters?
Well, the four of them, let's see, now wait, I've got three of them live in Hamlin and one at West Hamlin. I've got four brothers dead and four living. My sister lives in South Charleston.
Mm-hmm.
And I live up here.
So they're all nearby.
Yeah, all of them, the one in South Charleston.
Yeah.
Well, that's not too far away.
Not by today's.
Not today, but years ago it would have been.
Yeah. Well, okay, that's all I think of at the moment. I have another question now, Mabel, about the daily routine in your household, your family, in this would be the second and third decade of this century. What was an average day like, say, in the summertime?
Well, in summertime, we usually were in the field by 6 o'clock. Our mother had lunch. We came home and ate and rested and went back and worked till 6 that afternoon. And came home, and of course we were tired. But children, we soon rested up and we played till dark a lot of nights. And mostly our biggest crop was corn. And we raised also oats. One year we raised wheat for bread. Only 1 year that I can remember of. And of course we had raised cane crop for molasses, had molasses made. And then 1 year they raised broom corn and had brooms made.
Did most people raise their own cane?
Yes.
But someone would press the molasses in Hamlin, or
No,
do that?
They came to the farm.
They brought a press.
Well, the man that made our molasses lived nearby. He made good molasses too. And we kept cattle, had carts and horses, and hogs, but no sheep.
Could the animals be loose, or they have to be fenced in?
They were fenced in.
Even the hogs? Even in the fall when the acorns were falling?
All the time.
And did you have to take the wheat and oats to be milled somewhere, or could that be done on the...
The oats raised that for food, feed for the animals, the wheat and corn. They took it to a mill. I don't remember where it was, probably in Hamlin. That's one thing that I can't remember.
And in the winter, though, you'd go to school?
Go to school and come home of the evening and eat an evening meal, and then after we girls did up the dishes, and then we did our homework. We all had a table our father made for us, and of course we had kerosene lamps.
We put the lamp in the middle of the table, and we all sat around the table and did our homework. There was about, I don't know how many of us was in school at one time.
Was it a long school year or
9 months.
really full 9 months?
Usually started in August and ended in, I don't know what year or what month. Figured it.
Well, sometimes in the South they had shorter school years. Oh,
Well, they did here all the time. I remember one year our school was out on the 12th day of February. That was early.
February. Maybe they ran out money for the school. They a teacher left in him. Well, now March. They're in March.
Well, maybe we didn't have 9 months. I was thinking we did.
Seemed to me though, I was in school 6 months.
Probably was. I just forgot.
Where was the schoolhouse? In Big Creek?
Up on the real upper end of Big Creek. Now there's one, you can see the church house.
Where the church is.
Now we went there, that was the schoolhouse. We went to American San True also. That was a children's school.
That same building.
Yes.
There where Big Creek Baptist Church that you can see
That's it.
from Mud River Road.
That's the one.
Yeah.
And
They
I-
still have services there.
Yeah, we do. And I went in elementary room, and then I don't know what grade you had to be in before you went to we always called it the lower room and the upper room. And I don't remember what grade it was. You had to be in before you were advanced to the upper room, but I went both of them. I don't remember grade.
So there were 2 teachers also.
Yeah, there were 2 teachers, one for each room.
There was a little school down here at Myra, wasn't there?
Yes, years ago, in Oak Grove, on the other side of the river.
Yeah.
You know where the stone farm is?
Yes.
Well, it's in that.
Yes. Okay. Whose farm was it? What did they? Yeah. And that was on his program. Hello. More water. Yeah. No, how much would you make a year school teaching? I don't know how much. I don't know.
Logan and Mingo, I don't know just
Yeah,
how-
when did Mingo break off?
I really don't know. That's something I'd have to find out about.
But Hatfield Devilance's family had moved on over to...
They lived in Kentucky, I think, across the border, across the Sandy River. And then they moved back on Island Creek and
Well, the
into Logan County, and that was almost in Mingo County.
Yeah. Up at the head of Island.
Up
Creek.
toward the head of Island Creek. About where Sherry Ann now is. That's where the Hatfield Cemetery is.
Uh-huh.
Sherry Ann, I believe. And old Devilance, I've been by his home a lot of times. It burnt down, but he lived right just above where the post office is now, I think.
Well, they didn't
you have a bridge.
And there's a bridge right across, kind of across from the Syria and post office, goes up to the,
No, that's not what I mean. At one time he had a bridge in front of his house.
yeah,
Across the
goes
river.
back to the cemetery back here. I've been back to the cemetery a few times.
One place he lived, he had a bridge that he could draw up, and he didn't want anyone to come.
A drawbridge?
I don't know whether they called it a drawbridge or not, and then he could put it down. That's what I was trying to get Ray to tell you.
Well, I don't remember that.
Oh, I do. I've heard the older people talk about it. But I don't know where he lived.
Well, that might have been in Kentucky. I don't know.
Probably.
So there it was on the West Virginia side, though.
Well, it wasn't mostly when they were having all that trouble, but when a lot of troubles began in Kentucky, too.
Yeah. Where was it they had a cabin back behind a waterfall or a hideout?
Now, Keenan Ellis told me that his father sold Devil Anks a yoke of cattle. And he said Blackberry, and I thought Blackberry is in Kentucky, but I don't know. It might have been another. And his father delivered that yoke of cattle to Devil Anks. And while he was there, he kind of gave him a tour of the place, I reckon. And he took him up where this waterfall was, a hill or a holler, and they built him a sort of a fort or everything mostly is built out of logs in. And it's built over a waterfall. He said you went down and underneath and went up in it. They had a trap door in the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And he went up underneath, and then they had holes cut out in the logs where they could watch if they got pretty sure they were coming in on them or something. That's where they retreated to, and they kept that stocked, I guess, with food and probably ammunition, and I don't know what all. And I suppose they built it over that waterfall so they could get water anyway. They could probably take them a bucket and let down and get that.
Okay, continue with your family then. Now, who is, before we go on, who is Keenan Ellis?
Keenan Ellis was the son of my Aunt Zilphy Elkins. She was one of Uriah Walter's first children, my grandfather.
I see.
Well, he was your first cousin.
Yeah, she's a first cousin, or rather a half first cousin.
He was.
And Keenan was a cousin, a half. He was a first cousin or a half first cousin. I've been to his home. He loved tell them tales. I enjoyed listening at them, but I don't remember.
Mm-hmm. When did he die?
Well, he lived to be about 95 or 6 years old. He's been dead 10 or 15 years, I guess, hasn't he?
15 years at least.
I have his death date here somewhere.
And where did he live? Keenan Ellis?
He lived in Gilbert's Creek. I think he lived on the farm he was born on, where his father lived, Scott Ellis, and then Uncle Scott and Aunt Zilphy lived.
And that's in Mingo.
Mingo County. It's just above the mouth of the Horse Pen Fork of Gilbert's Creek, going up. It's on the main Gilbert, but it's just Route 52 goes up the Horse Pen Fork of Gilbert Creek, and right where you turn up the Horse Pen Fork, you turn left and go up the main Gilbert. You just left a half a mile or a mile above the forks of the creek there.
I see. Now, what else do you remember from your early childhood, unless you got more from before you were born?
Done which?
Anything else from before? Oh, who was it who got a quarter from Devil Anse?
Oh, that was Keenan Ellis. He said the first quarter he ever earned in his life at the Devil Anse, and some of his boys come to, I don't know whether they come to visit him or were just passing through or what, but and They lived several miles apart from where they lived on Gilbert's Creek over the head of Island Creek there, and Devil Range, of course, he was getting up in years right for it, and his feet give out on him. And he said his dad, that was my Uncle Scott, loaned him his horse, let him have his horse to ride on his way home. And they rode to the head of Horsepen Fork to where you turned down over on Island Creek. He lived 2 or 3 miles or so down on Island Creek over. And when
Devil Lance did.
Yeah, Devil Lance did. And the boys, I don't know how many it was of them, but of course Devil Lance rode the horse, and he got to the top of the mountain. Why, he put Keenan on the horse and sent him back with the horse, take it back to his dad, and give him a quarter and put him up on there, and said, "Now don't you mistreat this horse or run him or anything on your way back." Said that's the first quarter he ever earned. I don't know how old he was at that time, but that was the first money that he ever earned.
Well, it would have been 1880s or so then. Huh?
I really don't know when.
If Keenan Ellis died in his 90s, 10 or 15 years ago.
Keenan Ellis was 23 years older than I was, and I was born in 1904. He was born about 1880, I expect.
Yeah.
I was born in 1904, and that'd have been somewhere in the 80s, I imagine.
Or the 90s, yeah.
Might have been the early 90s. He just,
okay.
80s, 90s. Anyway, he was a boy. I figure Keenan was born about 1880 along there. I had figured it out, but I remember figuring up he was 23. He was 23 years old about when I was born.
And what memories do you yourself have from your earliest years? This may overlap a little bit with our first tape, but that's okay.
Well, the thing I can remember, things that happened when I lived. My dad lived at Gilbert, and I left there when I was 6 years old or a few days before. And I can remember quite a few things that happened around there just when I was a child, people playing around.
Were there still good farms? Were people still making a good living in farming up there then in Mingo? Or maybe they still do in that part of Mingo County? And no.
Farming was a pretty rough deal up in that country. They farmed, that's true. But they depended on timber and things like that. They dug lots of ginseng and things like that, and they raised horses and cattle, and lots of old rail fencing because they fenced the fields in that they farmed, and cattle and everything run out.
Yeah.
Fence your yard up, your gardens.
Mainly rail fences, huh?
Yeah. I can remember them rail fences. Quite a few of them was up there after Mabel and I was married going back up
there. The 20s or 30s, still a lot of rail fencing.
Yeah, of course, they all disappeared after a time about them.
Cattle disappeared too. They don't have cattle up there. They used to have.
Well, if the hillsides are awfully steep up there, maybe there was more erosion than even down here.
Oh, naturally, I guess there was when, but most of the farming was done down in the valley or maybe up the hillsides ways. There was some of them cleared off up a ways, and where they wasn't too steep rolled off.
And a lot of timbering.
Oh, there were lots of timbering when I was a boy, even after I left up there. But after the railroads come, well, then most everything timbering was brought out and sawed up there, probably, and shipped out. Already sawed up, or in a log one way or the other. But there were lots, when I was a child, there was lots of it rafted down.
Mm-hmm.
Took it out and rafted.
So not many people made their living completely in farming, then it sounds like. There was
Not
coal
too-
mining too, right?
Well, now the coal mining, of course, it come along pretty well after I was a great big boy, I guess. See, the railroad, I don't think, got to Logan until about 1907 or 8.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, coal mining was, that's what took it up there, of course, but coal mining has all come since 1907 or 8, when you get up into Logan County and Mingo County isn't up there. And they built those railroads in there. The C&O come up the Guyan River, and the Norfolk and Western, it come through from this big sandy side and built a tunnel through on the Gilbert's Creek. And Virginia, and it come down the Clear Fork of Guyan River, and there's all the meat at Gilbert. That was going to be a junction up there in the railroad, and everybody was looking forward then to Gilbert to being quite a place built up, but it really never did turn out like they expected it.
But the railroads did come together?
They did come together, but everything changed, and the state roads and all them things come in, and they all met up there eventually, the Virginia and the Norfolk and Western and the C&O. That was going to be, and there's still a junction there, but it never made the railroad center and all that they expected it to.
Mm-hmm.
But then, if I can remember the old people, they was looking forward to that to be a boom place.
Yeah, was it hard to make a living, or was there plenty of work for people who was interested in working?
Well, see, I left Logan County when I was 6 years old, and I was just back up there on visits. My father, he stayed up there. He lived in the town of Gilbert. He owned a home, and he worked around various jobs, I think. Carpentry, and earliest part, he worked in the timber business. He was a cook on a shanty cook boat on the Guyan River for a long time when they was timbering up there, I think.
Oh, after, no, when you were a small child, or before you were born even then?
Well, it's probably before I was born, and I imagine after. He stayed in Logan County, and I stayed in Lincoln County, and we wasn't together too much at the time. He'd come down 2 or 3 times a year. Maybe we'd go back up there a time or two, riding the railroad, after the railroad got up there.
That's your father? Your father stayed up there?
Yeah, he stayed up there. See, my mother died when I was young, and I came down here to live with my uncle and aunt.
Oh.
And I was raised in Lincoln County.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lydia Buchanan, Lydia Elkins, one of your father's Walter, my grandfather's oldest, one of his older children. Lydia, she married James Buchanan, and they had 3 children. Lydia died when children were small. I guess my grandfather raised the children. And Everett Buchanan, well, one of Aunt Zilpha's daughter, Heidi married High Ellis. That's some of the Ellis family. I don't know just which one. And he had a store at Christian. And Uncle Cyrus, after he went to Gilbert to stay with Aunt Frances, and he came down to Christian one Saturday to he was coming down home. He come down to visit home. Everett used to usually come with him. And but they was going to come down to the man train just went to Man then and come on down here, I guess on Saturday. But Everett worked for High there, and he said, well, I'll stay in the store and come down Sunday, and we'll go down Sunday. And he come on down, I don't know where he stayed down, probably with Walter Buchanan or some of the folks that lived down there. Well, it's what's Bruno now, that is Sand Lake. And that night, I believe it was the 20th of August, 1920, somebody come and hollered that where he lived up there, Christian, hollered, see, they run a store, and that was a common occurrence. People come and want something out of the store. And he raised up the window to answer whoever it was, and somebody shot him through the window, and he killed him. But they never got down home. I can remember that very well. And most everybody thought it wasn't intended for Everett, but it was intended for Hyde. But they just, it was a pretty moonlit night. I can remember that, and remember being up that night, home. And they had quite a time over that, I think. I don't think we ever sent anybody away for it.
It was something personal, not to rob the store? Or family?
I think it is some sort of a family difference with High, and they said he was a much more of a troublemaker. I don't know. I never was too well acquainted with him. I've been to his wife's home. We was at Welch when he lived there, if you remember. And he had one boy named Jack. He was that sort of but I don't know what it all was about. I don't know whether they knew or not. But High seemed like he was kind of had much more trouble with his neighbors, and everybody thought it was him. Don't think ever had anybody that had anything in for him either.
Was it a rougher area, would you say, than Lincoln County?
No, I don't think so.
Pretty peaceful.
It might have been, son, but
Same things happened in Lincoln County, especially
yeah, there's one thing.
March 50th Street years ago.
Of course, that's on the Guyan side.
Yeah, that's
Lincoln County.
River. Yeah, up Christian.
Christian's in...
It's in Logan
County.
County. It's about a mile above what Bruno is now. That was Christian then. Post offices took in a lot of territory. I guess about a mile above where my grandfather and folks lived at that time.
So the other side of Logan County.
It's on the opposite side of the river up there from where my grandfather lived.
I mean, it's the south end of Logan County. Upper Logan County.
Getting pretty well up to the Mingo line. It's always 2 miles on it there. I don't know just exactly where the line is.
Well, sometimes it seems there's a rougher atmosphere where there's cash jobs instead of farming.
Well,
that's why...
I think most of this early settlement back in these mountain views, they was pretty rough, kind of like they had fields, and of course they kind of stood in for what they thought, you know.